On the men's side, Robbie Avila now standing by with Seth Greenberg.
Thanks, Mike. Robbie Avila, I got a question for you. This is the most important question, really, and it's a serious question. You were as hot a commodity as any player coming out of Indiana State, and obviously even last year in the new world of college athletics. You probably could have gone anywhere you wanted. Why did you stay with Coach, and why are you still at St. Louis?
I think first just trusting the vision that he had for me. Obviously, coming out of high school, he was one of the first guys that really trusted me, and so I think just giving that same trust back to him, and then just seeing the vision that he has, for my future. I think the system that he runs is perfect for me, and so instead of becoming like a pick and pop big or just a pick and roll big, in any other system, I think all those kind of what led me to stay with him at St. Louis.
Does Coach have a favorite saying or like a bit of advice that he tries to impart on you guys or you specifically because of the relationship you have with him?
I mean, I think he's got a couple different sayings, but I think the biggest thing is the term Kaizen, which is kind of commit to everyday excellence. I think between that one and then the pound the rock quote that he always talks about, how you continue to hit this rock. It's not going to be that one hit that makes it crack, but just the continuance of hitting it over time and time. And so it just kind of reminds us that every day we continue to work to build the excellence that we're trying to reach.
What can we expect from Billiken basketball? You got a lot of new teammates. Any of those guys just kind of jump out at you, say, "Hey, Coach, let me tell you something. That dude, he's going to make us better."
I think we got a lot of our guys, the transfers coming in, even in the freshmen, that just kind of, shock us with what they do. Obviously Ish, Brady, and Trey, guys that could really shoot the ball. They have days where, they don't miss. And then you got the physicality of, Paul, Dion, just, those two, they bring a different type of energy. And then, like I mentioned, Q, his versatility, his speed, athleticism, he does things in practice that, not a lot of guys are able to do. And then, obviously the freshmen who are learning, are bringing their own things. And then, we got our returners. So I think we got a lot of exciting players that, if we do this thing right, would be a fun special season.
How does it, as a player, as a veteran, as a guy that understands who Coach is, how is the transition when you have all these new guys to understand what St. Louis basketball is all about?
I think it takes a little bit of persistence. Not every day is going to be a good day. We're going to have a tough times. And so, obviously with Schertz's system, it takes time to learn, what to do offensively. And so we had our, bumps in the road in the summer. But I think just the mentality of, staying at it day after day and, having a open-minded, positive, mentality every day for practice is, what's kind of helped us become, the team that we're trying to be.
Real quickly, your favorite nickname, quick.
Rob Wave is number one.
There it is, right there. Mikey, what's your nickname?
Mikey C, Mikey the Iceman. I've had a couple different ones. I don't know.
I'm just mommy, so
Yeah.
there's that.
He's great, man. Great job there. Robbie averaging over 17 points a game last year, but they lose finally to graduation. He's all done. Gibson Jimerson, an incredible player for St. Louis over the years, and Isaiah Swope, who came along with Coach Schertz from Indiana State. So, again, we're hearing it here, right?
Yes,
You stick with what you know. You stick with the guy that, recruited you and brought you here. And obviously, he stepped up a level. I mean, went from Indiana State now to St. Louis. So there's, you can go to where you want to go from where you're at with the coach and, keep it going.
Right. I mean, Larry Bird went to Indiana State,
Yeah.
so I mean, it's not a bad school to be at. But
Right.
for him to be able to get here to St. Louis and then say, I want to stay here because of the commitment to everyday excellence. I don't know what the acronym is that he said, but that sentence stood out to me. And then the pound the rock. I thought that was a great analogy, right? It's not the first hit, right? So if you're shooting and you're not making that first shot, you got to keep shooting the ball too. So it's just kind of like that mental rhythm that you want to have and that persistence and resilience in that way.
Yeah, St. Louis last year, there was probably a few games they could have snagged earlier in the non-conference and would have added a few more wins to their total and maybe potentially in conference play. They were 19-15 overall last year, 11-7 in the conference, which was tied for fifth. But again, Dayton and Loyola Chicago just one game up at 12-6. So, I mean, you're right there. That's how close every game is in this league, especially now with 14 teams. You see a little bit about what the Billikens have coming up here for 2025-26. Robbie, obviously the most notable, but again, good guys coming in, and they play, pretty good schedule as well too. And obviously, when you get in the league play, there's, now they're a year in, so they'll have more information.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, non-conference playing against Santa Clara, Steve Nash's alma mater. So, I mean, there's some tough teams that they're going to have to contend with outside of the conference, and that'll only prepare them even more so for in-conference competition.
Well, and the names of the jerseys, a little different these days, right? Sometimes I'm sure you see it all year on both men's and women's side, right? You're watching the games, or you see the scoreboard, you're like, so and so beat them. It's like, yeah, they did. Like it's not like what you remember a certain team to be because of the players they brought in and how they've changed their culture pretty quickly.
Absolutely, and that's just the parity because of the transfer portal, right? And the experienced players that you can go and get out of the portal. Yeah. And now it's just a different look for teams. They don't really have to have a slew of freshmen coming in there, 7 or 8 freshmen, to mold and compete against 23-year-olds. They have time and they can go and have a couple freshmen, but then also complement and bolster their roster with experience out of the portal.
We're going back to Pittsburgh. Josh Schertz is on the podium now for the St. Louis Billikens.
Honored to be here, 50 years, A10, incredible history, tradition, legacy, an honor and privilege and a great responsibility to all the players and coaches to follow the incredible foundation laid before them. And so really, really happy to be here. Excited about our group. I think we got a, energetic, ambitious group that, that's doing a good job, works incredibly hard. They've been inspiring to be around. Certainly feel like we have a deep, versatile team that has a chance to, evolve into a really good team. And, but certainly a lot of hurdles in front of us that we got to overcome to get there. But again, really high character group. Love working with them. Energy, ambition. They care, and they're working to hard every day to try to achieve some special things. So excited for it. And with that, I'll turn it over to you guys.
In the front.
Josh, Zach Weiss, Pittsburgh Sports Now. I wanted to ask you about Paul specifically, what he has brought to you guys and just how he's given you guys even more of that post presence and mindset.
Yeah, Paul Otieno's, been fantastic. What a, unbelievable ad for us. We felt like coming out of last year, there was a number of areas we had to improve upon if we were going to take a step forward in this league. And at the top of that was depth and physicality. Paul is an unbelievably physical player. His effort level's through the roof. He raises and elevates the effort level of his teammates, just how hard he plays. Not a guy that talks a ton, but man, does he get out in between those lines and compete. He's going to bring a different dimension to our team than certainly we had last year and probably that I've had in my career. And he gives us, a versatility to where he has the ability to play with a guy like Robbie. And they can play together, and certainly he can play as a standalone big and with 4 perimeter players. So great addition for us, has been every bit as what we had really high expectations. He's exceeded them both as a player and as a person.
Matt Moderno, Mid-Major Madness. I was similarly curious about Dion Brown, somebody that has been a volume scorer at the mid-major level, and what's his position been like so far?
Yeah, Dion's, I think similar to Paul in the sense of the physicality he brings. Even though he's not a big guy, his offensive rebounding numbers are through the roof. They've been, throughout his career. He's been a guy who's played a lot of basketball. He's been a 3-year starter, 2 years at UMBC. He started at Boston College last year. His competitive spirit, something I thought we really needed. Robbie's, an incredible leader, and he does it, I think, the way you have to be successful over time. He's what we refer to as calm endurance, the ability to, he's very even keeled. But we didn't have last year was a guy that brought that competitive fire, and that you need a little bit of that crazy inside your team. And Dion is he's just an unbelievable competitor. He's got a competitive spirit that I think is contagious. The intensity he plays with, the urgency he plays with, I think that drives that inside of the group. And similar to the way Xavier Bledson was for us at Indiana State the year before, he was that guy for us. I think Dion brings that to the table for this team. And on top of that, obviously a terrific scorer, a guy that puts the ball in the basket. He's unorthodox, but effective.
Josh, Mike DeCourcy with the Sporting News. You've now coached in 2 leagues with great histories. Can you sort of compare what it's like coaching in the A10 versus coaching in the Valley? And since you didn't have to change locations to that much to, you only went down the highway a little bit.
Yeah, good question. I think, you know, the leagues are, like you said, tradition-rich leagues. I think the coaching in both leagues is phenomenal. You know, when I got into the Valley, Porter Mosier, Ben Jacobson, Brian Wardle, I mean, Darren DeVries, all those guys. I mean, it was incredible coaches. It's different in the sense that this league is in such a Northeast league and in major cities. Different than going to Cedar Falls, Iowa, or Carbondale, Illinois, or Terre Haute, Indiana, where you don't have that. And I think, the biggest difference to me was the athleticism in this league, in terms of the Valley. The Valley has such high skill level across the board. I think the A10, the size, the athleticism was eye-opening for me making the jump. But both leagues are, top 10 leagues in America. I think the A10, obviously, the depth and the athleticism size is a step above what it was. But certainly both leagues, great coaches, great players, and completely different in when you get off the plane, the kind of places you're in, whether you're in Philly or New York or, Carbondale or, Springfield, Missouri or Cedar Falls, Iowa.
Hi, this one's to Robbie. This is Nick Fernbaugh from Fern Visuals. Last year, you led the A10 in turnovers per game. So what did you do during this offseason to try and work on trying to fix that?
I did a couple things. I think first is, building my body physically, handling the physicality. I think that was the first thing. And then on the court-wise, trying to tighten up my ball handling. There were some, scenarios where guards were getting underneath me on the perimeter, kind of just knocking the ball out of my hands. And then just working against, again, the same physicality, in the post, at the high post area, where, again, more physical guys in this league are, getting underneath me and, really trying to, speed me up. And so just a combo of those, a couple of things is, what I've done to try and, help bring those turnover numbers down because, obviously you can't win at a, a high level if you're going to turn the ball over heavily.
The back left.
Josh, you told me for Blue Ribbon over the summer that the plan was, maybe more is less for Robbie, being able to measure the minutes out a little bit more.
Sure.
What kind of went into that decision? And Robbie, can you kind of follow up on whatever he has to say on just how you kind of think things might be different, playing maybe in shorter bursts, but perhaps more effectively that way?
I think less is more. I would hope for Robbie is, less minutes and to kind of piggyback on the, part of the reason, and Rob's too humble to say it, but part of the reason he led the league in turnovers was the amount of playmaking that was on his plate at 6'10". We didn't have a team that was great at creating advantages. We had to manufacture them. A lot of that responsibility fell onto Robbie's shoulders. Isaiah as well, Swope, but those guys had such a huge, in terms of creating advantages, responsibility, and that's why they were, I think, 1-2 in the league in turnovers. So I think Robbie playing less minutes will allow him to be more effective in the minutes he plays instead of trying to pace himself for, 38 minutes. If you're playing 30 minutes, it's a lot easier. You could play in shorter bursts, and I think having much more like at Indiana State, where the playmaking and the scoring was more evenly distributed. I think we're the only team in the country last year with 3 guys averaging 17 points a game. Plus, that being more distributed should allow him to be more efficient, more effective in the minutes he's out there.
Yeah, like he said, just not being out there all the time, obviously it's going to be, better for my body physically, and so I'll be able to, play harder, in the shorter bursts. But, I think it'll just, create, different opportunities for the different guys that we got on this team as well. I think we have different dynamics between our, our bigger guys, whether it's me, Paul, Kalu, maybe Jackson, Badar, those guys. And so I think, it'll just not only, change, how long I'll be out there, but just what's going on out there as well.
David Jablonski, Dayton Daily News. Coach, how well positioned is St. Louis in this new era of paying athletes directly? And does it change how you deal with players, on the court or off the court?
I just call them sir now, but no, it has not changed. I think the first part of your question, I think we're well positioned. I know the league is. There's a great commitment institutionally from our board of trustees to our president to our athletic director, Chris May, on down to understanding the importance of, men's basketball and the commitment levels there. We talk a lot about that, the mutual commitment, our players to the school and school to the players, and we feel really comfortable with where we are and certainly where we're going. I think it's, at the beginning, but we're certainly in much better situation than we were when I got there, and I think we'll continue to improve that. In terms of coaching guys, I honestly, I get asked that some. I haven't changed. I think you have to, at the end of the day, you have to really coach guys in a way that you're honest with them, that they know. I think players always, if they know that you genuinely care about them, authentically, not just as a player but as a human being, if they feel like they can trust you, that what you tell them they can take to the bank, and that they feel like you're competent as a coach, that you can help them individually become the best player they can be, and you can help the group collectively become the best version of themselves, because ultimately for them individually to get what they want, all that's downstream of team success. You got to be able to make them a better player and help the team win. Players will buy in and do what you need them to do, and you can coach them hard as long as you do it in a way that's respectful. And that hasn't changed from my time in Division II to now. It's the same approach. I have to build that with each player, a level of they have to know I care, they got to know they can trust me, and I got to fool them into thinking I'm competent.
And what are your philosophies about scheduling? How difficult is it? Was it any easier in your second season at St. Louis?
No, it was actually in some ways harder. I think we have to continue to push the needle forward. Certainly, no question that Dayton has set the standard in terms of non-conference scheduling, and I think there's a lot that goes into that. But the biggest thing is, what Dayton's been able to accomplish over a long period of time has given them cachet in being able to get those high major games and get in true home and home series. You got to play good games. You got to play as many of them as is feasible. There's a needle to thread to build your net into the way it needs to be, and certainly playing really good quad 1, quad 2 games and then taking care of your business in the other games is the needle to thread. But we need to continue to look at ways we can improve it. We're finishing up home and homes. Like, we'll welcome in San Francisco and Grand Canyon to Chaffetz. We had Santa Clara coming. There was a, kind of a snafu with the MTE there, but we had Santa Clara coming as well. Would have had 3 top 80 teams in the country coming to Chaffetz this year. But we want to continue to look at opportunities to build our schedule out. We want to schedule every year. I think I'm aligned with Chris on this in terms of you want 2 bites at the apple. One bite at the apple to get the tournament is, an at-large bid. The second bite in the apple is being in position from a conference standpoint to compete for the tournament championship. And so we want to get as good a bite at both of those as we possibly can. So, how we schedule non-conference and who we play in the round robin in conference, you want to give yourself the best opportunity.
Well, thank you, Coach. We're out of time.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Robbie.
2 bites at the apple.
I love that.
Christy, what kind of apple you have?
I know it's a cornucopia. It's either you take a huge bite of the apple or you squeeze all the juice out of the orange. It's very coach speak. I appreciated hearing that.
There was a lot there from him, and also with Robbie too, who played almost 34 minutes a game last year, and he did that at Indiana State. They had a starting 5 that really never came off the court. It was like 6 guys really that they ran out there. So I think that's going to help the cause, because you say all these turnovers, but when you're playing the most minutes, you're susceptible to having more.
Oh, absolutely. Fatigue. I mean, that does a number to you, right? And it's not just your physical ability to get from point A to point B. There's some mental fatigue as well, because your body is tired. You need to come out for a little bit. And it's not like a huge chunk of time, but maybe 2-minute spurts, come out, catch your breath, get something to drink, and then hustle back in there. But yeah, I mean, he even said, physically it'll be better for my body. And I was like, there's a fatigue factor I think he was referring to. For sure.
That's a good point. All right, that wraps up St. Louis.